The ultimate match of the famous performance SUVs we have here for you today in our exclusive comparison. The Mercedes GLC 43 AMG against the all-new BMW X3 M50. Who's gonna prevail? We'll find out here together with Thomas and Autogefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go, starting with the all-new BMW X3 with a large double kidney here, now also here with an illumination feature. I think it's pretty cool here, especially when it's a little bit darker or at night and so on. Fire red here is this vehicle color for today, and in the M50, the M Performance trim, you also have a lot of black elements as a contrast. Yeah, so very strong look, upright look, monolithic. In contrast to that, the GLC here has more round features. It almost looks tiny in comparison to the X3 M50. However, here in the AMG trim, you also have the vertical fins, large grille, wide in the lower part, this Panamericana style, and also black contrast. Also different graphics than here for the AMG version in the lower part. Yeah, what do you think, like from the first glance, which one would you go for? Recently, we've also reviewed the normal base versions, so to speak, so the non-sporty versions. You can maybe take a look at that later on. And I can already tell you so far, as a very interesting outcome here today, and also totally something unexpected from me when I reviewed the normal versions, and now when I was reviewing the performance versions. So these will be very interesting findings here for sure. Let's move to the side. So both are more or less 4.75 meters or 187 inches in length. So yeah, that's pretty much the same. We also have both with 20-inch wheels here today. You could spec up to 21-inch. Here a more aerodynamic styling for the AMG than in this case, and all the way blacked out, all the details and so on. Yeah, so this looks a little bit sportier and more sinister. However, suspension technology does differ a lot. So interesting here with the GLC is that in Europe, for the normal GLC, you can get an air suspension and a rear axis steering that goes 4.5 degrees in the opposite direction. Not available in the Northern American market. However, then here with the GLC 43, it is different. You get an adaptive suspension, but not with air. However, then available all across the world, and also rear axis steering, just 2.5 degrees in the opposite direction, but still, it's available everywhere, it's standard, and it also helps you when maneuvering like very tight corners, a U-turn in the basement garage, and that's of course an advantage in comparison to what we have with the BMW X3 M50. To the rear, more round shapes for the GLC 43, and does the Autogefühl fake exhaust police does any job here today? Well, here for the Mercedes, yeah, these tips look beautiful, but the real exhaust is on the inside, so this is not the real exhaust. Whereas with the BMW X3 M50, these are real exhaust pipes. So from the outside look quite similar, but they don't have something on the inside which looks different than what we see on the outside. Both have black contrast on the lower part. However, the design difference here in the rear is huge. So once again, more wider structures with the BMW and more angular design, whereas a more roundish design than for the GLC 43. Very interesting. As for the suspension here with the BMW X3, you get an adaptive M suspension. That's then also here standard with the vehicle, and it also then varies according to the driving mode. And we also have the 20-inch wheels mounted. 21-inch would again be possible, but I think also comfort-wise it's not clever to exceed it way more. In this case then we also have the blacked out frames here all around. So a lot of elements that come close, but still a huge difference also in the design and a lot also in technology. With the Mercedes, it's also usually it's a little bit more expensive, then it's more technology at the same time. Later also more about the pricing. One thing I want to mention here with the BMW M Sport Packs, or then standard for the M50, are these mirrors that have this additional sporty wing here. And it looks cool, however, from my experience, it creates more wind turbulences at higher speeds. So I don't think it's the most clever idea, honestly. What I want to show you as well are the signatures here from the indicators, and you can start there in the front. You can see that the BMW has this pulsing function, so it looks like a heartbeat. It's still very well visible. And here in the Mercedes, it's also pretty cool in the front. Oh, that's very close here. So here, very wide, yeah. The appearance is of course a little bit different, but I think both is well done. However, if you move again to the rear, this is a very interesting difference once again. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool that they have like this different design approach for both of the vehicles so that they really differentiate. And I would say if you compare the base versions, yeah, the biggest difference is both in the front wing with the grille each. Here in the rear, this looks not that sophisticated with the Mercedes. So I think in the front both is cool. In the rear, the indicator war is won here then, or the indicator battle is won by the BMW here, because yeah, you can maybe win a battle, but it doesn't mean that you win the whole war. More of that, of course, very soon. Now we will take a look at the engines. As for engines, a huge difference here today. So there, with the Mercedes GLC 43, a 2-liter 4-cylinder, 420 horsepower. And you remember we had the 6-cylinder in the previous generation. Both have all-wheel drive with a rear-wheel bias. And then here with the BMW X3 M50, the famous B58, 3-liter 6-cylinder, just around almost 400 horsepower. So horsepower-wise, a little bit less. However, yeah, still more cylinders, more displacement. And you know there's no replacement for displacement. Or as we say in German, Hubraum ist durch nichts zu ersetzen. Listen and repeat, Hubraum ist durch nichts zu ersetzen. Which means there's no replacement for displacement. Yeah, and the acceleration figure is 4.6 seconds for this one here and 4.8 seconds for the GLC 43. So there's 0.2 seconds difference. However, in the miles per hour figure to 60 miles per hour, the difference is even 0.3 seconds. Yeah, that's very interesting. And you also have to remember, this one here has another sibling that is quicker. Not only the GLC 63, which is also a 2-liter 4-cylinder, there is the GLC 450D, a 3-liter 6-cylinder diesel, the only 6-cylinder engine in the lineup, and it's 0.1 seconds quicker than this one here. So I have to say, in comparison to the 63 GLC, which adds over 300 kilograms more in weight because of a plug-in hybrid performance system, this one is the better choice. However, if you want a 6-cylinder, you gotta take then the GLC 450D in that case. With the BMW, this one here is the gem of the lineup. Now it's also electrified, so it's a mild hybrid system now in this B58. But we already know this engine and it does really, really well. So engine-wise, I think this one has a big advantage, always just from like being stationary here. And people who are buying in this segment want a 6-cylinder. And it was good in the GLC 43. But with all the emission rules and so on, manufacturers are of course pushed in that direction. So it's not only fault of the manufacturers, but you see, BMW, for example, still does it. Key fobs and the door closing sound when we approach the interior. So both keys are nice. The Mercedes one is a little bit heavier. So I think the Mercedes one feels a little bit more premium, but both look good and also nice in the build quality. And then as for the door closing sounds, the X3 a little bit more low frequency, so that gives you a better premium impression. Rear doors, better with the GLC than the front door. Interesting.
Maybe front door X3?
Yeah.
And rear door
GLC,
yeah.
exactly. I agree what Lea says. The front door sounds better with the X3. The rear door sounds better with the GLC. Interesting, right? Well, then let's get to the interior right now. Then the interior of the X3, integrated door handles, but they still come out. Then instead of the doors, you have the top part somewhat structured. Also, you can push it in a little bit, but still relatively hard. Then here you have the leatherette cover, but it should also be a little bit softer, high gloss black. And no cover at the inside of the door, so the build quality of the door should be better. Also this part here, you can move it as a whole, and it's a new part here for the adjustment of the vent with the capacitor, hashtag capacitive BS control, open and close. This should be better. I like the ambient lighting integration, but I mean, it's also good that they went for a matte finish than high gloss black, because you would have even more fingerprints than like here. But the build quality should be better, definitely here. Then
no
the
entry badge.
Entry badge is also missing here. Yeah, steering wheel, the M Sport. This is from Animal Material. The base steering wheel would be animal free and feels actually better than this one. But here you have the nice contrast stitches, for example. Seats, high-grade leather red, the so-called Veganza material. This is really good, industry leading, very nice, plush in comfort, looks nice, also is good in durability and so on. Some Alcantara insets here also in the M Performance version, that's also cool. And the headroom here in the seating position with 189, 602, yeah, still some space left. And steering wheel here with a manual control up and down, in and out. Yeah, and this cockpit overview, it's really interesting, completely new of course in this generation. This is nice here with a soft touch here on the dashboard, some stitching, very small glove box, I have to say, with the famous German Parkscheibe or Parkuhr. Gotta put that on, otherwise you directly end up in jail while parking. And then you have this 2-screen layout here. No physical climate dials anymore. Really sad to lose them in this generation, because here also to control it, it's really small. Also when you activate seat heating or steering wheel heating, sometimes it's a little bit, yeah, I have to turn on the ignition for that. Sometimes it's, why is it not working now? So the climate unit is working, but then the seat heating not. That appears now. Yeah, stuff like this is kind of strange. It's too slow, the infotainment system. And also when you activate it like with passenger and driver at the same time, sometimes it doesn't work simultaneously because it's like blocking each other. Kind of weirdo. So definitely the physical dials would be the best here. Ambient light integration is pretty nice. I love that. Here, look at that. When you hit the hazard lights, you have this animation also at the inside of the doors. I found it pretty cool. It's not necessary, but cool. And also when you switch the driving modes, for example, to the sport mode, you have the animation and it's running through like this. And here, watch this area where the red becomes blue then for the M colors. So I think pretty cool. Why not having some fun with that? The middle console is large. You have on the left side inductive charging pad, which is also ventilated. Right side just to put your phone, 2 USB-C chargers. Then very good adaptive cup holders also. They hold the bottles tight. Here you can still control something of the infotainment system. You can select and press some things. For example, when I selected my drive mode selector, I can either confirm in the screen, or I can also select here and then press this one, for example, to select sport mode. Overall, still too complicated, I feel. Nice and plush armrest. Open that. More space underneath for that, for example. Yeah, I mean, overall, there are things to criticize, but you still, especially due to the good seating comfort, still feel at home in this cockpit. Minus, yeah, I would still prefer the easier gauges to control, especially temperature and driving modes and so on. And really large shifting pedals here. However, build quality wise, for this price could be better, but putting in the turning indicators, that's a lot of fun. Driver POV, real buttons still here at the steering wheel, for example, to change the music titles here and here for the volume and so on. Then the digital instruments. They only really come alive when you start the engine, actually. There we go. And then you can also pick different layouts. And the same goes also for the head-up display you can get. And the infotainment system, I mean, it looks nice. As I said, it should be a little bit quicker. App overload here always. The Apple CarPlay integration is quite nice. It's also here really wide and everything, but it should overall be quicker. Yeah, and the climate unit integration is not ideal, as I said. Also here, for example, at the inside of the middle armrest from the BMW X3, they can't do that to us, this material quality, not at that price. BMW has to fix this. Rear seats of the X3, light and shadow, for example, nice structure on the top part, however hard plastic, once again, no cover on the lower part. Also, for example, here, this net here, I had something in there, you know, like overnight, and it's already like loose, this net here, so that's bad quality. However, great quality again of the seats and seating materials, plush for the rear seats. It's a great seating comfort also in the rear seats, that's really nice. They also have this Alcantara insert here in the top part area, so it's really comfortable to sit here. As for the space that is offered, well, it's a thing with both of the vehicles, so they don't offer too much legroom when a tall driver is sitting in the front. And headroom, well, this one is the one with the panoramic roof, fixed one. You can apply like a hardcover shade, however. I mean, like it's a soft one, but hard in the meaning of that you can apply a real shade that is really blocking out the sun. There we go. So it could be like all the way. And it's also more silent on the Autobahn then. So, but here to the side, it's not too much headroom, just here in the middle where you have the glass roof. So looking forward to how it is in the comparison then with the GLC. And in here in the middle console, 2 USB-C chargers and a separate climate unit, large middle tunnel. Rear seats of the GLC, covered on the top part, hard plastic on the lower part. Yeah, basically the same. A lot of high gloss black here as well. And then we also have the back part of the performance seats here. So that would be a little bit different than also with the normal sport seats. And how plush it is in general. Here in the rear of the GLC, it's more plush and more comfortable than with these front performance seats. Definitely here also with the microfiber equipment. And well, you sit not as comfortable as in the X3. So seating comfort in the rear is better with the X3. Here in this case, it's the one without the panoramic roof. So yeah, that's not like a real fair comparison. But yeah, it works definitely with the headroom. Legroom also comparably short, but I feel that you have a little bit more legroom at this moment in the X3, but only because of the seats. So if you have the normal sport seats with the GLC, both would be comparable in the legroom. You also have 2 USB-C chargers, however, not a separate climate unit. You can just adjust the vents here.
But clicking sounds.
Yeah, but clicking sounds is nice, yeah. That's cool. Let's check out the front interior of the GLC. So here we have everything covered, so it's nicely done. Then a lot of high gloss black, but a nice ambient lighting integration as well. This is nicer done. And then here at the inside, yeah, also hard pack, just like a rubber pad at the bottom. But yeah, it's also quite spacious. Yeah, this speaker here from the optional Burmester sound system, that one looks fancier, definitely. And oh, we have an entry sill badge here also with AMG. It's also illuminated, so that's cool. And also AMG logo at the floor mat, for example.
Points for the GLC.
Yeah, points for the GLC indeed. And I like this turbine vents here with clicking sounds, also with the ambient lighting. Then perforated steering wheel. In the new GLC model year 2025, with the base versions, you can also get, for example, animal-free steering wheels. And this one here, in the AMG, also with microfiber and carbon fiber, also available, for example. Seats, they are standard here in microfiber and inside and leatherette outside, in both versions. So these are the option performance seats. They look amazing. However, yeah, they are not as comfortable as the standard sport seats. So we have to take this one into account because the standard sport seats would be a little bit less bucket seat alike and they are also more comfortable. These here are extremely hard. They have hardly any Einsitzhöhe, so like the seating depth. So I can really recommend you to stick with the base sport seats. They will give you way more comfort. So it's also not that fair in the comparison. I cannot compare these seats because then the GLC would like directly lose as for the seating comfort. We have to compare the normal seats and then the difference is not as large to the X3. However, the X3 will always have better seating comfort. So even the normal, like the normal comparison to the normal sport seats, there the X3 is a little bit better. Here actually we shouldn't take them into account at all because I don't even know why they offer them. Really, like someone who tested this vehicle from Mercedes internally, I can't understand how they got through quality testing because they are just hurting.
In our car,
yeah. Everyone who was also passenger on this one here, and like 5 different people, we because I'm something, it's just me. No, it's just not just me. These seats are absolutely unacceptable from the comfort. Once again, they are an option, so we can't take it into the overall account then for the comparison. Then headroom here, still fine with 189, 6 for 2. Here we have a closed roof. There's also a panoramic roof available, however. And here we also have the electric changing of the steering wheel. Cockpit overview, something completely different here with the vertical layout of the screen. Here, however, a lot of high gloss black. However, cooler with the drive mode selector because here at the steering wheel, I directly just switch it here. Comfort mode, sport mode, and that's it. I don't have to spend years in the infotainment system. So switching the driving modes easier here and also the climate unit. Yes, it's also not physical, sadly. However, where it's placed, easier to reach and it's also a little bit bigger. So controlling the temperature and the driving modes is easier in the GLC. Also here the quality of the shifting pedals behind the steering wheel is way better.
And seat heating is here.
Yeah, and seat heating you can activate this. So to activate the seat heating also easier. However, what's not that logical here again, I have no separate button for a steering wheel heating. So the steering wheel heating is activated together with the seat heating. If you only want to activate the steering wheel heating separately, then you have to do it with the voice control. Yeah, it's weird. And yeah, and what Leah always criticizes is that after a while, the seat heating goes from level 3 to level 2 automatically. Even though if you really want to get burned, the car decides, no, I'm going to save some, burns. The vehicle decides, no, I want to save some energy now. Yeah, that's the thing. So all pro and con. Turning indicator is better to hammer in with the X3. That's more fun there. But definitely a large difference in the whole dashboard atmosphere here, more with the turbine air vents, nice ambient lighting integration. And here you can pick different decor elements for this one. However, then, yeah, this is too much high gloss black for me here, I feel. Middle console you can slide open. And then you have these cup holders, which are on the one hand adaptive, but they're so loose that they don't catch the bottles, you know, enough. The inductive charging pad is way hidden in the front. And then you have this rubber lip. So this also something, yeah, 2 USB-C chargers also there. Even here, something of the quality is not that convincing. It should just be better at that price point. Split armrest, that's cool, with more space underneath and stuff you want to hide, also for viewers. 2 USB-C chargers, more. Yeah, so with both interiors, there is indeed light and shadow, and I would just mix it up. You know, the best of the BMW and the best of the Mercedes, and then we would have a perfect combination. Maybe the engineers should do more exchange than fighting against each other, because I mean they probably have a common enemy now from the competition outside. And then the driver POV, once again here with all the commands here, also for this artificial sound you can activate hashtag capacitive BS for the controls for the cruise control. That's easier in the BMW once again. However, with deactivating that speed limit chime in the BMW, you press and hold set from the cruise control button, but here it's you press and hold the mute button, or do it here in the top left of the screen, so to deactivate that speed limit chime. Then digital instruments, you can pick different layouts. Here we don't have a head-up display, but that would still be an option. And the main infotainment unit, more on this vertical layout, as I said, easier for the temperature unit. And you also have this main menu with just a better overview, so easier to access. And Android Auto, Apple CarPlay is, by the way, wired or wireless, both possible. Finally, Leah is also on camera here for our sound check. And here the Burmester sound system is nice. I also put it like to the 3D sound, so really decent, like it. Gotta check how it is in comparison to the Harman Kardon in the BMW, because it's really good when you have like a comparison of the sound systems. You can really go in depth into it. Gotta say though, in the Volvo XC90 lately with the yeah, well, it's like the what was it there? The Bowers and Wilkins, yeah, Bowers and Wilkins sound system.
Say Bowser.
Yeah, the Bowser,
From the Super Mario.
the Bowser system. Yeah, the Bowers and Wilkins systems. They were actually a little bit better, even. That was pretty cool. Yeah, but here already on a very high level. The Burmester sound system, they always set the focus on being the most authentic sound for music, like for purist music lovers. However, when you think about like Sonos or like Apple and so on, they rather have the technology that they try to make like a bad source still like very well in the like how you hear it, you know. And in most cases, that's better for the customer, I feel, because for the Burmester sound system, you usually need like the high quality audio source, and usually no one has that. Best greetings once again from Snowland, as it looks like here. So here in the BMW X3, the comparison, Harman Kardon sound system, also really nice. So we like both systems indeed. They're both good in each aspect. I think the like the difference is really that in the GLC it sounds a little bit clearer, more authentic, like it's also the philosophy of Burmester. And this one here, the Harman Kardon, gives you a little bit more bass boost, even in the normal setting. So you more have a, like a,
in the clubs.
Yeah,
boom, boom,
like a
boom.
more club atmosphere. So there the question is more like, probably if you hear more electronic music, the Harman Kardon will be better. If you more hear like a lot of acoustic music, then it will probably be better with the GLC here with the Burmester. Trunk or boot comparison, let's open them both. So here we go, we have 620 liters with the Mercedes, 570 liters with the BMW. So liter figure wise, this one has an advantage, but is it also in the practicability? Here the cover, it seems everything like all right and everything, but I had the feeling that sometimes while driving it's doing a rattling noise, but I'm not sure where is it coming from. And when I open it, one stays like this, it doesn't appear anymore. It's strange. Here is like 1 meter 10 or 43 inches in width. That's good. And here in the length is about 1.40 meters, and the width here in the top stage 74 centimeters or 29 inches. And then underneath there is more space. Here there's like just an additional cover, and here, for example, way more space underneath. I think that's where the leader figure is coming from. Oh, and this hidden basket here, for example. And another advantage for the GLC, you have the remote unlock of the seats here. That's pretty good. And also the front seats are moving a little bit forward. That's why it's a little bit biased. I can't measure to the top of the front seat, but this is here like, yeah, 1.75 meters, something like that. So like 66 inches. So more luxurious trunk experience with the GLC, because gotta take the ruler with me, right? So here with the X3, top cover is also pretty massive indeed. Opening this one, and then in the width is kind of the same, also like 1 meters 10, 43 inches. Also the approximately the same length, of about 1 meter 40 inches, maybe a little bit longer with the GLC then. And here the height, this is also, yeah, exactly the same, 74 centimeters, 29 inches. Just here underneath, maybe a little bit less space. Could maybe also fit a replacement tire for that. But overall comparable. The only annoying thing is here I have to reach over to fold the seats like this or go around them. So this is way better than with the remote unlock with the GLC. And the length to the seats as we would be driving is also, yeah, similar. Yeah, almost 175 or 69 inches. But I feel like in the length we saw that the GLC like is a tiny bit longer. Yeah, but not the biggest difference. And both are pretty versatile. Sport mode. That was a quick sprint from 50 kilometers an hour to 150 in the sport mode, starting with the BMW X3 M50. Really nice, especially from that engine. Here in the sport mode, this sound is also more pronounced than in the normal mode, so especially when you hit the RPM here. However, you can also deactivate these iconic sounds, so to speak, and let's just hear like what the differences it makes, and then also later on how it behaves with the Mercedes. So here, when I deactivate and accelerate, it's a difference, right? Then one more time here with activated. Yeah, so especially in the sport mode, it makes a significant difference. However, here in the BMW, you have the feeling that it is a more or less natural sound. So I think the sound actuation here is well done. So why not? But yeah, you don't have to use it. You can use it, yeah, just as you prefer. Also nice how everything is changed to red here with the ambient lighting. It's always a nice effect. However, switching between the modes, to me, always a little bit complicated. That you either you have to press here my modes, and then you have either to confirm in the screen, or yeah, at least we have that here using this lower MMI turning, pressing knob, and then select one more time to sport mode. Still doing that while driving is distracting. So there definitely with the Mercedes, where we have the turning jog here at the steering wheel, that's easier. So here in the BMW, a little bit more complicated. As for the suspension here, we have the adaptive M suspension here, notably, standard also for this model, notably stiffer here in the sport mode. And as long as the road is very even here, a nicely built Autobahn in Germany, for example, it's fine and good while driving in a sporty way. At the end of this driving part, we'll also go up some, winding roads. This will be super fun, I can promise. However, I feel the suspension is too stiff here. Connected with the 20-inch wheels here also, there's hardly any dampening left. Here in the normal mode, it's better. And right now in this situation, it's fine. But as soon as you start driving in the city with some potholes and so on, or over some humps, like these speed bumps and so on, which have funny names all over different countries, by the way. So, the famous drempels in the Netherlands. So best greetings to all our Dutch viewers, where we also have, of course, the specific Dutch channel, Oude Gefühl, Het is Oude Gefühl. Yeah, and then, for example, in Germany, we sometimes, like when they're across the road, they're just, called whatever, but when they're like single humps on the road, which have like 4 sides. They're called Berliner Kissen, like Berlin pillows. Weirdo, right? Yeah, I don't know. Better not to meet them. But definitely I can tell you that then the suspension is really uncomfortable. So here with the BMW X3 M50, yeah, you have to decide if you are actually willing to lose that comfort. It's not the same in the normal BMW X3, but that guy wanted to cut us off or something. Yeah, was it an M5? I think, right? It was an M5. Yeah, but of course, like not the most current generation. And also here, when like controlling everything while driving, here I always have to look at like how I deactivate the seat heating or something. Yeah, not ideal. That's also easier in the Mercedes to do it, for example, at the inside of the doors. Yeah, so controlling this car here while driving, a little bit more complicated. It's better to leave everything as it is. But the driving behavior is also awesome here, just like lane changing here at 140 kilometers an hour, awesome. So it's a lot of fun, keeping the car upright and so on. There, of course, the sporty suspension plays a very helping role. And then, for example, yeah, I see here, I waited like a second, like not long enough, and then I couldn't switch it, because when you press it and directly want to turn, then it's lagging behind. So the system is also not the quickest one. A problem that a lot of manufacturers have, that their infotainment software is just not quick enough. And there, once again, Tesla is so much quicker than everyone else. Yeah, huge problem in the industry, definitely. Here, what I want to show you, when I do some lane change in the sport mode, the car is even stiffer than, once again, it keeps more upright. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And once again, however, this is the case when there are no bumps in the road. And when there are some bumps in the road, you feel that the car gets a little bit off balance in a way, because it's getting too rough. And that's the thing. A sporty suspension is not always the best, and also not the best for lap times and so on. That's why, for example, especially for the Nürburgring Nordschleife, the suspension is always set on a softer tone to even out the topography and bumps and so on. And here now we're approaching some Autobahn change with an S combination sport mode. This engine is just a gem. So I'm going to talk about like in depth of this engine here very soon after this next acceleration, because this is the special thing.
The seats are very good.
Seats are awesome. Yeah, they're here. Look at
They
that now.
hold you tight and comfortable.
Indeed, yeah, Leah is right. They hold it tight. At the same time, they're also comfortable. Here now, super fun S combination. Then right, wow, this is a lot of fun. Really great. And yeah, as Leah said, the seats are holding us tight. Great comfort with these Viganza high-grade leatherette seats. They're also soft. They have a great Einsitzhöhe, so like the seating depth in the top area. This is really awesome.
Today.
Oh yeah, yeah. Leah with her high-grade leatherette leggings, of course. They are just awesome to look at always. Really beautiful. Most beautiful thing in this car here, for sure. Oh, look at that. In front of us, Macan S. That would also be the Porsche competitor. Let's see what the Porsche competitor can do. That's a fierce bump.
Yeah.
Transverse. Now 200 kilometers an hour, 125 miles an hour. Now it's getting also quite loud here. Oh, now it gets really, really rough and shaky. Yeah, I'm stopping the acceleration right here just to look at traffic. Yeah, and of course, I mean, most cars get loud at this speed, and this.
The mirrors are so loud.
Yeah, the mirrors. What we've noted is that, like. Yeah, when we. This way. Yeah.
I'm always like, huh?
Yeah, definitely here the roof shade. So we have the fixed panoramic glass roof here, and because yesterday we did some other tests, also high speed, and it's notably louder when it's open. That makes a huge difference. Wow. Yeah. Indeed. So you better should keep it closed here for the like high speed Autobahn stuff. But the most significant thing is really the side mirrors. They look great with this additional wing flap, but they create a lot of wind turbulence, especially at higher speeds. Gotta say that though. So here in the SUV segment, this is still a silent vehicle as for the wind noise. But here I have the feeling that the Mercedes is a little bit better. We will of course confirm that maybe or not when we soon hop then over to the Mercedes. This will be very interesting. Yeah, and once again, when you're driving really, really quick and the suspension is rough,
There's one bump, then it's like
yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't really give you a super safe feeling, because when the suspension evens out things better, that one actually gives you a more safe and
Yeah.
balanced feeling. It's now changed back here to the personal mode, and then check out the assistance systems. So we have here, of course, adaptive cruise control, then also active lane keeping assist, and the BMWs do it in a very, very smooth way, definitely. So here, when the road is slightly bent, you hardly see or feel the corrections in the steering wheel, so that is very, very well done. There's also the, at the moment can't do that because too much traffic here, but there's of course also semi-autonomous lane change possible. So everything here, blind spot monitor and the side mirrors, everything assistance systems wise is really top notch here in this vehicle. Let's now change this motorway here. Let's keep it not in the sport mode, because I feel the suspension is more likable than basically, because here also another transverse bump. Let's see, and I think it just behaves better in the normal mode as for suspension. This is like, yeah, this is so much better.
Yeah.
Interesting. The steering is good, steering feel is nice. That one's better in the sport mode though, gotta say that, because it has more resistance, but I would really not put this car in sport mode. Yes, you have better acceleration, but suspension feel is so much better here in the normal mode, and I really feel that it's also more fun to drive it with a less stiff suspension, because when it reacts less bumpy, you also have more feeling and more control over the vehicle. That is very, very interesting. So yeah, and then about this engine, this has to be the most important factor with this vehicle. I mean, you've seen the performance and stuff, yes, but even if you are like, you know, just like slowly rolling, you know, I mean, like rolling towards traffic light, and you slightly push it, it's like just this instant reaction. It's directly there, even at these lower speeds and so on, and you feel that this engine is so refined, so cultivated. Yeah, it's definitely one of the best engines out there. I really love it. Well, let's go. Ah, nice. Slight wheel spin in the rear wheels, because the road is slightly wet. Nice steering control. Yeah, suspension is rough, definitely. You do feel that. Here, of course, in this case, it's good. Plop, plop, plop from the exhaust. It's a lot of fun, beautiful. Seats are keeping me tight. At the same time, they're super comfortable, so that's also good. And also, if you are in these transitions there, the engine just is always at the right RPM where you need it. It feels so refined and cultivated. Nice. Also here, left-right corner. Oh, pigeons. Yeah, okay, pigeons are gone. Let's continue. Now we can accelerate even more out. Although we are uphill, it's giving us so much performance. Beautiful. Yeah, that feels super, super great from that engine. And also in the dynamic, in the driving fun, you really feel one with the vehicle. Pushing you out now, the really, really tight corner. Woo! Sliding a little bit over the wet leaves. This is so much fun. And obviously Leah is enjoying too. That's also a good sign. Wow. Beautiful. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Sport Plus. That was also 52, 150. Definitely this artificial sound is a difference. It's an option in the configurator, and you can also, while driving, deactivate or activate it. And here in the GLC, I feel it's too artificial. You also have some kind of rattling sound here in the speaker. Actually, it's like just listen to that, like with. It means like, and then now I deactivate it.
Sounds better.
That sounds bad. You even have the crackles and plops from the exhaust. So definitely I would leave it off. It's just like, I don't know, it doesn't work here, this sound actuation in the GLC 43. Too artificial, and also some crackling, rattling sound from that speaker that doesn't work at all. Better to leave that one off. And you can also here leave it off on the steering wheel, control it easily, or just don't go for this option at all. As for the acceleration, I mean, performance-wise, we can also compare the time code, how 50 to 150 made a difference. That will be very interesting. I cannot comment on that at this moment. We have to once again check the time code. But of course, you also feel the performance. So just performance-wise, the 2-liter 4-cylinder is not a problem. What you feel, of course, that in the 3-liter 6-cylinder with the BMW X3 M50, you have a little bit more refined feeling, especially, for example, also when you're just in the comfort mode, then you're slightly on the throttle. Here, that's like, in the same way I approach the throttle here, this one here is shifting back, like just here, it's always shifting back to get the power. And in the X3, it's not always shifting back. If I were just slightly on the throttle, it's like and it pushes forward. But here you feel that it has to do more RPM to get the same power. That's the thing. Yes, it is a little bit slower on paper already, a couple of tenths. But the difference is really like this refinement and the sovereign feeling of the engine which you have with 3-liter 6-cylinder. You don't have that here. An alternative could be to go for the GLC 450D, because the diesel is still available as a 6-cylinder and is 0.1 seconds quicker than the 43 petrol engine. That shouldn't be actually. That's the thing. So performance-wise, you still get it here with that one, definitely. But engine-wise, you feel that in the power delivery and also the refinement, the cultivation, and the shifting. The BMW 3-liter 6-cylinder, the B58, is just better than this one here. Also here, like the transition between the shifting is sometimes not, it's very good, it's smooth, but not as smooth as with the BMW X3. You only feel these nuances in the direct comparison. However, then again, here with the Mercedes, it is more silent on the motorway. Yes, this is a fixed roof, but also like when we compare it with the closed roof with BMW, here I feel a little bit more silence. And what's also very interesting, you only feel it when you directly hop from one car to another. So just driven the X3, hopped to this one here, and then you feel that the X3 more feels like an SUV, and this one here more feels like a crossover. And you also feel it, for example, in lane changes. So this one here feels more agile, going right and left. And this also accounts for this feeling that this...
My tummy feels better, yeah.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So Leah says that she feels better as a passenger, especially in sporty driving. Yeah, that X3, you feel that it builds like higher, than the suspension is, especially in that X3 M50 M performance mode, really, really stiff. This suspension here is also stiff, but you feel that it evens out the stuff in a better way. We know how the normal GLC is driving with the optional air suspension we had recently. That one is just way more forgiving, of course. But here, this adaptive suspension is sporty, it's stiff, but still good. You lose comfort also in the 43 version in comparison to the normal GLC. That would again be an argument to go for the 450D, for example. Yet again, in this direct comparison here, GLC 43 against the X3 M50, this suspension here enables you more fun and sporty driving without losing too much comfort. And also, you will also probably see that later on when it goes like some agile corner up the hill, when the suspension evens out the stuff in a better way, the car also stays calmer. And that is a very interesting thing. Here in the normal driving mode, you can also drive sporty, no problem. You just hit the throttle, and also here the lane change. A lot of fun with this vehicle. And we initially also felt it with the GLC 63, which we have been driving in Spain, also in winding corners. It's so much fun here. One of the most fun SUVs to drive, definitely. And you tend to forget that it's an SUV. And there, once again, the differentiation that the X3 feels more SUV, feels more upright, and this one here feels more crossover alike. And the question is then rather what you actually prefer or not, you know. So that's totally up to you then. Here, for example, when the road is getting a little bit bumpier, suspension, you also feel this roughness. But yet again, I think that difference is in some bumps, both are uncomfortable, but when you have like some waves and how it affects the driving itself, that's where the GLC is mastering that one a little bit better, I feel. They are very interesting nuance. Also, as for the steering input here, the GLC is a little bit more precise, which is astonishing because that is a field that BMW should occupy. And maybe that guy's liking the vehicle, I don't know. So let's put it here once again to the sport mode in this S combination and see how that feels in comparison to the X3. And also how Leah is feeling. Really leaning the car here into the corner. Beautiful, nice steering input. Acceleration out there. The engine could be a little bit more like instantaneous. Yeah, but from the steering feeling, that is beautiful. So it's really what you feel in the corner. Always that with the BMW, you have fun with the engine all the time. So like, that's beautiful, and acceleration out.
It sounds good, yeah.
Sounds good, and also like it's calm and sporty at the same time. And here you have fun with the suspension and the driving agility all the time, you know. So these are the two different focuses. Let's see one more acceleration when this Audi Q7 has passed. Let's go. That was to 130, and now when we're already at speed, wow, that was also rough. It's rattling from the speaker behind me as well. Wow. So they gotta deactivate that stuff and leave it deactivated. Yeah, you feel that the X3 has more performance, especially here in these high-speed areas. Yes, from 0 to 100, it's just a couple of tenths difference. This one is lower, but even more difference I feel when you're already at speed. Then the X3, we've been just driving the same Autobahn party and just pushes you even further. But this one here, I mean, it's still a very quick vehicle, and in comparison to all other vehicles like a Dacia Duster, which we've been driving here on this road just
nice
2 weeks
color.
ago. It's a nice color. I like that color of the Duster. Yeah, beautiful color, definitely. Pretty cool. Looks very modern also as well, and off-roadish. But here in comparison to the 6-cylinder of the BMW, so in these higher speed regions, it just has more push. And this one here, then you feel, yeah, it's tuned, but it's just a 2-liter 4-cylinder. It remains that way. So, yeah, I mean...
But it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course enough. More than enough, and more performance than most other vehicles on the road. Yeah, it's so much fun to drive, right? The brakes are really...
They're crazy.
In German, we would say they are giftig. Like... poisonous or toxic. Toxic. Yeah, so they really hammer the brakes in. And then here, some assistance systems test, keeping us behind the truck there, distance being kept, also being kept in the lane. It's also done in a smooth way. Blind spot monitor is also there for you. So it's also very sophisticated as for the assistance systems here, definitely. So they're both really good here. The shifting pedals, I feel, they are a little bit cooler here in the Mercedes. They, yeah. And the drive mode selector. So shifting pedals, you can hammer them in. So the BMW is a little bit better with the turning indicator. How you hammer that one in is more fun. But here the shifting pedals are actually more fun. And it's so much easier. You can either do this or just leave your hand here and just turn it with your thumb. So to turn the drive mode selector here is way easier than selecting everything then centrally with the BMW. Yeah, here the suspension is stiff and rough, yes, but it's somehow giving me a more connected feeling to the road, and it's gluing more to the road. It's sticking more to the road actually. So great driving fun here, and Leah seems more relaxed, you know, from the facial expression and so on. Wow, this actually in driving, especially with the AMG versions here, 63 or 43. This one does not feel like an SUV because it's so agile, it's so great in the driving fun. So from the driving dynamics, the 43 is just awesome, whereas the X3 really scores with that engine. Can we find out even more about that when we drive it up the winding hill? And here we go. Nice steering here, super smooth. All-wheel drive with rear bias, you feel that? Really beautiful. Let's turn off that sound emulation, it just goes on my nerves. I can show the difference when I'm accelerating. There we go, next corner. It's beautiful handling. So really, really great in handling. And also if you do some like left, right, and so on. Super precise, and yeah, who would have thought that? Oh, look at that. W123. Beautiful vehicle. There we go. I would have thought that I especially applaud Mercedes for the steering, you know. They used to be a little bit like laggy in the steering in like 5 years ago or something. But now really, really great precise steering work. And this is so much fun driving these corners here. Wow, that's amazing. So definitely one of the most fun SUVs, I have to say. Accelerating out here, and you know, hear the difference? It's like or not. So I leave this extra emulation off, definitely. Can also use the shifting pedals myself to be in a lower gear, for example. Also here then shift down myself before this really tight corner. Beautiful, so much fun. The shifting pedals you can really hammer in. Next right. Wow, this handles like a sports car. Amazing. So this is like the discipline for that vehicle here. It's so sporty, and yeah, I'm not missing anything from the 63. I'm really enjoying that we have less weight here, definitely. Leah?
Yep.
Fun factor?
Yes.
Leah's sum goes up.
Thumbs.
Yeah, and when Leah is not getting sick or something at all, can you show your face that it's still... Yay! That's beautiful. Your face, of course, and and the driving of that vehicle here. Wow. Consumption, that's very interesting. So with the BMW X3 M50 with the 3-liter 6-cylinder B58, a lot of numbers, right? You can score some 9 liters on 100 kilometers, 26 mpg US, 31 mpg UK. That's great for an engine of that performance. With the 2-liter 4-cylinder here in the GLC 43, you rather land up with about 11 liters on 100 kilometers, so 21 mpg US, 25 mpg UK. And that's clearly worse, and is also different to the normal 2-liter 4-cylinder, whereas here with the BMW, the consumption for the normal 2-liter 4-cylinder in the lower specs, like in a 20 or something, or in a 30, this one has almost the same consumption. That proves again that if you go for more cylinders or higher displacement, does not necessarily mean that you have higher consumption. So efficient, powerful, engine-wise here, this is clearly the winner here from the X3, but there are of course so many more aspects. And it's even more interesting because recently, because you asked me to do that, first the normal versions and then also the performance versions, we've been testing the normal X3 versus the normal GLC, like in the 2-liter 4-cylinder spec and so on. First of all, what I want to have as a remark that no matter who wins in the comparison, I'm not a certain fanboy of any specific brand and have zero interest in promoting one single brand to do more sales or something like that. So I test the individual vehicles without any brand bias at all and give what I am experiencing in the most authentic way. So if people say like, yeah, like it's always the same, like I let one vehicle win and then you say, you're just a fanboy of this brand. But no matter how it turns out, you know, when, like for example, when the E-Class won against the 5 Series, you are a Mercedes fanboy. And when last time, you know, a BMW won, you are a BMW fanboy. So, yeah, I just ask these people to really consider the hard effort and work we are putting in to give you the most authentic and unbiased reviews. That's what we do, and not fanboy stuff or whatever. So first of all, as for the pricing, on the Northern American market, you can get this one here as it stands with some equipment already for about 70,000 US dollars, whereas this one here is about 80,000 US dollars. So there's a larger price gap on the Northern American market. Spec'd also, as they stand here right here for the German market, European market, they are more than 90,000 euros. And the GLC is always a couple of thousand euros more expensive. but at some point it also has some more technology equipment in it. But yeah, probably a larger difference that this one here is a little bit more affordable on the North American market because it's also built in Spartanburg than in the US. But like bottom line, both are very expensive in these specs, but the Mercedes will always be a little bit more expensive. And usually the BMW also gives you more discount and also better leasing rates and so on. So like at the concise dealer prices, you can calculate with that the BMW X3 will be a little bit cheaper, so to speak. As for the differences, I mean, the design is really different, more angular than here with BMW, roundish with the GLC. And from the feedback that's all around there in the comments, of course, it's a matter of preference, but most actually say that they find this one ugly and most prefer design-wise the GLC. For me personally, I think it's total. Leah is nodding. So Leah is also more like a GLC design fan. I think it's totally personal. I think both have something, and I don't find the X3 ugly, honestly. But yeah, I think that's just personal choice here on the exterior. On the interior, I think both are well designed, but I think also both lack some luxury features on the interior. So the build quality on the interior should be better at this price point, but that counts for both. I think was just with the X3, it becomes more obvious because, especially in comparison to the previous generation, they had some coast-cutting stuff then going on in this generation. And yeah, I talked with BMW about that, like just simple things, like, you know, like they have felt in the inside of the doors and entry sill badges. And I think they have to do better there. And I'm also thinking that they will improve it, you know, at some stage then also here with this new generation. But yeah, I can really well understand if people are somewhat disappointed with the interior. Also with the GLC, if you push some things or like the trunk cover that was from rattling, heads from rattling stuff. This is a problem for the German manufacturers. They are still building great vehicles and they drive phenomenally, especially in the sporty handling way. But for that price, we also expect that the interior is flawless. And that's not the case with both of the vehicles. Even if you go for the normal sport seats here with the GLC 43, the seat comfort will always be better in the BMW X3, and that's a big point definitely, you know, that the comfort of the seats and the quality of the seats is always better here with the BMW, and they have also more solutions for all markets with going animal-free on the interior, whereas Mercedes lagging behind there a little bit. Driving-wise, it's also a big surprise then, the GLC has the better handling and also the better suspension, plus the rear axle steering technology. That's making it more likable to drive. And I feel also that the suspension, I mean, both suspensions are rough, but the X3 suspension is definitely rougher and makes you, you know, feel less in contact with the road a little bit if it's getting really, really bumpy. And yeah, that's the thing. So driving-wise, the GLC is the clear winner. Engine-wise, however, when you just accelerate, the 3-liter 6-cylinder, yeah, you can't really beat that, how smooth it is. It's just a gem there under the hood. And that again is better here, especially in the X3 M50 version. Yeah, and so once again, it's a super, super hard pick. I can tell you that just like from the personal pick, like if we would need to switch vehicles now or get in one and drive home, Leah would have picked this one here and I probably would have leaned slightly to this one. But it's really the thing that I would wish this engine in this vehicle or this chassis in this vehicle. You know what I mean? That would be the perfect combination to me because I have so much fun with this engine. At the same time, I have so much fun with this driving agility. And so it's really a thing of, is seating comfort and the engine characteristic the most important for you? And also like a little bit lower price? Then it's this one. Is technology and driving agility, you know, transfers, the most important thing for you, then it is this one here for you. Yeah, would like to hear your feedback on that. And I also have to say, since they're both not perfect here, I would actually, that's very interesting, pick this one here as the GLC 450D, because then you have still a great driving agility, but you have the 6-cylinder also in the GLC. And here with the X3, as much as I really love this engine, the normal X3 was better to drive because the suspension was more comfortable, and then I would rather go for a normal BMW X3. And we also had that comparison here recently. You can check it out right now.